Wammo breakfast.
Live from the New Scientist Labs, it's Janine Young with Wammo on Kiwi.
From the Scientist Laboratories, it is Janine Young in Melbourne City with us this morning. Hello to you, Janine.
Good morning, Wammo.
Lovely to see you once again. And if you're watching the Skype video, of course, then you can see Janine. Or if you want to watch it on demand, she's also there as well, always on demand. Janine, first up this morning, we're talking about, well, actually, there's a bit of a theme, I should say, to our New Scientist slot this week, around being eco-aware and being energy efficient, shall we say. The first up, we're talking about wrapping up warm, energy efficient insulation, a bit of a hot topic at the moment.
Certainly in Australia as well as New Zealand, we've had some issues with a government program that rolled out a while ago to put insulation into people's roofs. Unfortunately, the foil that they were using electrified the house. That's generally considered a bad thing. People have died, there have been fires, they're having to go through do a whole bunch of inspections. The principle was sound. The principle was very sound. The whole idea of making your house better insulated is going to make a difference during winter. The house I'm currently in, I've now been for 2.5 years, and it has minimal, if any, insulation. It is stinking hot in summer. It is freezing cold in winter. It is a truly unpleasant place to live when it's really extreme.
Isn't it bizarre? Our forefathers and mothers and grandparents and who built the houses in Australia and New Zealand, it's like they only built them in the summer or something. They didn't expect to live here in the winter.
And you're worse than we are. You have some horrific weather conditions in New Zealand, even in summer. I love New Zealand, but geez, some of the weather, good Lord. However, simple things like building for the conditions doesn't seem to have occurred to a lot of people when they built houses. And it's even worse in some places in the UK, in Germany, right the way throughout Europe, where it gets substantially colder than it does in either of our countries. And they're starting to look now at retrofitting, working out whether, draft proofing, for example, a simple process of making sure that you don't have too much air leaking in or out of your house. For example, if you heat a room, the last thing you want is for that warm air to be slipping straight out the front door. I know mine does, and I know it goes straight out the ceiling. It's terrible. I can feel it happening. But by draft proofing your house, that can make a huge difference into your energy consumption and your energy efficiency. Now, I have a bunch of figures in front of me. Forgive me if I look down for a moment.
No worries.
Draft proofing costs about £200, so that's about 425 New Zealand dollars. They reckon that it'd be paid back in about 8 years with the savings you would make on the amount you spend on energy. That's without doing anything else at all. So that's relatively inexpensive, and it does make a difference to your energy efficiency. Larger things, for example, like double glazing, can take about £5,000, so around about 10,500 Kiwi dollars, but that's going to take 35 years to pay back. Now, that makes a massive difference, though, because you save 720 kilograms of carbon dioxide a year. Now, if you have really long payback times, part of the issue is who's going to pay for it. Not everybody is going to hang around in their house for that long period of time to get the full benefit of everything that they've just installed.
Yeah.
If you put a wind turbine or a bunch of solar panels on your roof, they take a lot longer to pay back because they're a lot more expensive.
This is actually,
solar panels are...
I'll butt in here because this is really pertinent to a situation I had this week. Where we've had someone come around, because there's a government scheme here at the moment where you get a discount on your insulation at the moment if you get it installed. And we had the person around this week for the quote, and they said, now, how long are you planning on being in this house? Because we could quote you for the pink bats, or the equivalent of pink bats, which is the fiberglass product, or the wool type product, the more eco sort of friendly product. But that's going to be more expensive. Now, the fiberglass is less efficient because it settles over time, whereas the other one lasts longer. And so it's quite interesting there that question needs to be asked. How long are you going to spend in the house, and whose problem is it going to be in the future?
Well, part of the way that some of the European communities, Germany in particular, is getting around this, and also some of the places in the United States, a bunch of states are attempting to tackle this, is by putting the debt onto the house. So when you sell the house, the person who buys it inherits the energy savings that come with it, but they also inherit the debt. And it's an interesting way of thinking about it. It's something that we don't normally do. It seems to be a really effective system that if you give people a really low-cost loan to be able to do things like solar panels or insulation, like proper insulation, not just pink bats or whatever, and you plug them up in the walls. It could also be cavity insulation. It could be a whole range of different ways of achieving it. Because if you have a solid brick house, then putting insulation on the inside takes up a vast amount of floor space, and particularly in some of the small houses in the UK, that's just not a feasible option. So there's other types of insulation that are slightly more expensive but take up less space and have reasonable efficiency. There's a range of variables. You've got to think about every house in isolation. But the principle of giving low-cost loans to do some of these things and then the debt stays with the house is a really effective solution for emergent cities. It's something that I don't think has been considered in either of our countries, and it probably should be, because if you're properly insulated, whether it be through draft proofing or having stuff in your ceiling or having stuff in your walls, or even just having 2-inch thick brick walls, like a friend of mine does, it's brilliant. It's a converted old mill. We had a 46-degree night or 40-degree night back in January. I stayed at their place and it was still 25 degrees overnight.
Yeah.
It was stinking hot the next night, but that wasn't really the point. So that form of insulation makes a huge difference to how you live and the amount of energy that you consume in being comfortable.
That's
in the
right.
way that you live.
And it shouldn't be just measured in energy savings terms. It should be measured in quality of life.
Quality of life makes a big difference to anyone. As I said, I've lived in this house for 2.5 years now, and the winters are just awful. They're terrible. Now, I knew that I was going to be moving fairly soon, and indeed I'm packing up this house and moving very soon. So, yay, very excited about that. But I know what it's like to be in a very, very cold house and a very, very hot house, and it's not comfortable. I choose not to be here. And so that has implications for where else I am and who else's energy I'm using and that kind of thing. So it's complicated, but in being able to make comfortable homes, people are actually going to use less energy, both in summer and in winter.
Hey, from one green topic to another green topic that some greenies might be a little bit defensive about, so Janine.
Yes, this one's a little contentious. At least in some experiments that some researchers have done, they've been asking students, well, here you go, here's part of your problem. Sorry, I was a student, I can say these things, to look at a couple of online stores. Now, they've set these up to be, I don't know, they're bogus, but they've set them up that one of them has the majority of conventional products, the other one has mostly green products, so it can be, instead of incandescent light globes, you can have the nice compact fluorescents, the really energy efficient ones, that kind of thing. Yeah. They were asked to put $25 worth of goods into their basket, and they walked out the other side feeling pretty smug. As some people who do green, eco, good for the earth, tree hugging hippie folk, I think is the phrasing that tends to go with it sometimes.
Yeah.
Disparaging them. We don't encourage disparaging. However, these people walk out feeling pretty good with themselves because they've done what they could. The researchers then went on from that and said, okay, here's $6. Allocate that between yourself and a friend. And they found the people who had gone through the green store online and bought more green products kept more for themselves than those who hadn't, which they thought, oh, that's interesting. Then they went on to a second test and said to them, okay, here's a bunch of dots on a screen. There's a diagonal line that runs across them. There's some dots on either side of the line. You get I think it was 0.5 cent for every dot you say is on the right-hand side. You get 5 cents for every dot that's on the left-hand side. Now, there were equal numbers on either side, but they found the people who'd been shopping in the green online store overplayed their hand a little bit, and they lied and said that there were more dots on the left-hand side so that they got more money than those who shopped in the conventional store.
The selfish buggers.
That's what they're starting to think about. They think this might be a process called self-licensing. They also found this after Barack Obama was elected. A lot of people who'd voted for him and had said, yep, really happy, black president, it's all good, then went on in subsequent studies to say that they actually thought that a white person was going to be more, what's the word I'm looking for, appropriate for a job. They didn't say they'd be better, they said they'd be more appropriate. This self-licensing is a kind of, well, I've done my good deed, so I can do what I really want to do now. And they don't know how much this translates into the real world. It could be that it's just the way the experiment was set up. But if it is in fact true, it could help explain why some of the schemes that have been running, particularly in Europe, aren't working. Because people think, well, I've done my bit, I don't need to do any more.
Yeah.
I can therefore, take in another area simply because I've done my bit over here. So they think it might be an interesting kind of mindset that people get into once they've done their bit, for example. They think, nah, I've done my bit, I'm right now.
Interesting stuff. Janine Young, our New Scientist correspondent. Those stories in New Scientist magazine next week. And we'll catch you next week, Janine.
See you later.